Did you, was there a point where you really kind of took charge of getting your own records and stuff that you were into? Do you remember what you first went out and bought yourself?
Oh, God, I don't really know. I mean, so among the earliest records I ever bought with my own money would have been the Sex Pistols record when it came out in the U.S. because I saw them on TV, like morning TV, Today Show or something, before I went to school. And I was just like, that's hilarious. There's a dude named Johnny Rotten and a dude named Sid Vicious, and they looked all just sort of silly. And so that was literally one of the first records I bought. I think I bought Waterloo by ABBA as well.
Very similar.
Yeah, similar. Well, but I mean, this is the dichotomy. It's like you kind of look at how you wind up, you know, like being the kind of person that you are. And it's like I had ABBA records I was listening to and Simon & Garfunkel records or something when I was like 11, and I was listening to like Sex Pistols. And so you kind of listen to what I do, and it sort of kind of adds up in a weird way.
And with that stuff, playing a little guitar, were you trying right away to figure out that stuff and learn that stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was punk that really did it for me. It was like Pistols and the Jam and the Clash. I mean, because those bands, I also was a huge, I was very into the Beatles. I had this, the Complete Beatles, that black book that had every song in it, you know. And I would just sit around for hours, like kind of working out, you know, sort of do-do-do, you know, just kind of.
Chord diagram.
Yeah, exactly, you know. And so that was like a really important songbook for me, I guess. And then from there, it's like learning how to just bash out power chords and stuff, and then learn how to do little rudimentary sort of leads. And kind of, I guess, the combination of the punk stuff and then the 60s stuff like Beatles or Byrds were a very important band to me too, because it was all in D. So it's easy to play. It's like Ds and Gs and stuff like that. So I kind of figured I could play that. And kind of putting those two things together, you just kind of walk a little further down the path all the time and get a little bit better at doing things. But, you know, one thing is like, I didn't ever want to play guitar. I just wanted to play bass. Like when it was mooted that we would have a band like me and some of my friends, I just wanted to play bass. And it's like I always was trying to be the bassist, and I never wanted to sing either because I thought I had a terrible voice. I kind of do, actually. But nobody else could play like leads or anything. And so I just always would get mashed over on a guitar, which kind of sucked at the time. And then I had to learn how to sing and stand up in front of people and do like that stuff I just did there, you know. Because everyone's too shy, and I was just like, fuck it, I can do it, you know. It's like, you know, if nobody else will sing, I'll sing, you know.
So at what point did you switch over from just playing along with records to actually being able to play with other people?
I think I must have had a band, 14 probably.
And this would have been in Stillwater?
Yeah. So it's like Battle of the Bands kind of stuff.
So it's just friends from school?
Yeah. And I mean, at that point, there were a ton of kids in Stillwater who were playing. Like, everybody played guitar. Like, there were tons of bands. And most of them were trying to do, like, kind of Journey covers or something, you know, or Van Halen or something, you know. And I wanted to do kind of weird stuff, and so it took a little bit of a process to find, that kid's into the B-52s, and that kid's into Joy Division, and that kid's into the Clash, and that kid's into the English Beat or something. You kind of assemble them. This is before we knew that there was a music scene, like, in Minneapolis or anything. It was just sort of like whatever people were cobbling together that was like sort of punk or whatever at the time, or new wave, you know.
Were you coming into Minneapolis for shows? I mean, did you
that started when I was 15, I guess. Because, I mean, you know, Stillwater's 25 miles out of town. It was hard to get a ride, like if you're like 14 or something. But when I was about 15, then it was like it was a weird process where all of a sudden I found out about KFAI, and you could barely get KFAI in Stillwater, but you could on a good day, you know. And so, yeah, exactly, yeah. And so we would listen to the local show on that all the time and find out about these bands, and it's sort of like, and I started working at a record store also when I was 15, and so.
In Stillwater?
In Stillwater, yeah, it was called Underwater Records.
Was it right on Main Street?
It was Underwater Music, the guitar shop. I don't know if you're ever there, but it was Water Music was the guitar shop out there, so it was Underwater Records. Kind of clever. And, you know, but they were nice hippies that ran that place. And they tolerated me playing really weird records at the time. You know, I'd sit down in the basement and play, you know, just probably hellacious, like PIL or something like that. And they're just going, what is this, you know? But they tolerated me, and I was able to sort of build up a little following of the other weird kids. And then we'd start special ordering things, you know? It's like you know, sort of special order some crazy import. It would take like 2 months to show up, you know? But it was that kind of deal. And so by working at the record store, they had Sweet Potato there, which was the precursor to City Pages. And so you'd open that up, and it's like weird. There's like all these bands. Like, what are they? And most of them were sort of like Dare Force or something, these big sort of like show, or Chameleon, you know, the band that Yanni was in, you know. Yanni was a band. He was a keyboardist in a band that was in St. Paul. It was prog rock, like kind of a Yes kind of band. We were not interested in that. The stuff that we were interested in, you start reading these interviews with these weird bands. I remember reading like a Replacements interview when I was probably when I had just turned 15. And they were talking about, those bands. The Suburbs were obviously big enough that there was a venue called the St. Croix Boom Company, which is on Main Street, which was a biker bar. And I'd been there like when I was a kid, like a little kid, like 8, 9-year-old, because like Carl Perkins played there, the rockabilly guitar player who played with Elvis and stuff. My mom's a huge fan. Like that show happened, a bunch of other things. But it was like a biker bar where there'd be like 100 Harleys, sort of out front on the weekend. It was terrifying. I mean, I wasn't scared at that time, but by the time I was 15, I was like, I knew that you wouldn't go there on a weekend because it would be bad news because we were funny looking, And these guys were just like total bikers. But like on Monday night or Tuesday night, I don't remember which one it is, they had New Wave Night. And so they'd have all the punker bands from Minneapolis come out. And so, sort of Suburbs came out, Replacements came out, Crash Street Kids, who are like a power pop band from out here, Flaming O's or Flamingo or whatever it was called at that point. This is all, sort of bands that were popular, bands. And the scene at that point was weird because all the different suburbs had a place like that. That was like a rock bar. And they all had New Wave Night. And so the bands, who were popular bands could play each of these places around, and there'd be like, a couple hundred people that would show up just out of curiosity. It's like, what's this New Wave thing? It was an interesting thing, but we had a venue in that town, and so it was really cool. So that kind of like threw me a lifeline. And then I found out about first Northern Lights. Well, it was called Hot Licks Records, which was on White Bear Avenue in East St. Paul. Which was like going into a completely different dimension where it was like every band you'd ever heard of, they had the whole catalog. And it was like astonishing. And then from there, going to Orfolk, which is now Treehouse Records, in South Minneapolis here, and Northern Lights on University Avenue, which is long closed, and Hot Licks, which was in downtown Minneapolis. These record stores were like church. And they were full of people who all seemed ancient to me, but they were probably like 21. And they were these like sort of oracles of rock, and they just knew everything. And so then it was like you could buy NME and Melody Maker and Sounds, like all the British newspapers, and you'd buy Maximum Rock and Roll and all the fanzines, Flipside, all of that. And it was just that sort of process all got dumped on me right at one point. It's holy shit, there's like this enormous universe of music out here.
Locally?
Well, locally and nationally, that there was a whole indie rock thing that you just wouldn't know about, that there were bands all around the country that tour all around the country that are doing this kind of crazy music that you thought was some exotic thing. And I guess it was sort of exotic, but there was actually rather a lot of it, But the local thing, is like, was booming. I mean, I was really lucky that I just stepped into the middle of like this crazy thing. And probably like one of the first shows that I ever went to in Minneapolis would have been here. And it was a Replacement show with, I think, E. Brown opening in, I suppose, late 1982 or something like that. And that was a big deal because we'd heard like, well, what record would that have been? I guess Stink would have been the current Replacements record had just come out. And we had that. We were all like super pumped, And that was like a thing where a bunch of us went out like as a sort of expedition to see what it would be like to go to the scary basement bar at the U of M and see the punk rock show. And that was the beginning of, the thousands and thousands of shows I've gone to since then, really,
So did you keep trying to play? What were your bands in Stillwater? Were you playing all this time in a band there?
It's like really dumb bands. What you would do is you would like, it would be like the National Honor Society would have their winter party in somebody's basement. And so you'd get a bunch of dudes together and learn like some covers or something and go down and do that. Nobody was writing songs or anything yet, And then Battle of the Bands, of course, like a huge thing where it's like we would go and be the weird band with all the other bands that were trying to be REO Speedwagon or something,
What was the name of the band?
We'd just make up some name, So that was like always, there wasn't really a sort of defined thing happening yet, Because I was trying to find people who like, who really got it. And it didn't occur to me that I could write songs yet, even though I'd been writing little ditties.
So these were cover bands, essentially?
Oh, yeah. Just do it. It would always be really funny because there would be like, like the bass player would maybe be a little bit of a metalhead or something. So you'd have to do like Taking Care of Business by Bachman Turner Overdrive, and then you would do like your Clash cover or something. It's like that kind of thing. It's just, because you'd have to throw a bone to or usually it'd be the drummer Because not all drummers are as cool as Mike Ryder out there. It's like most drummers were unreconstituted metalhead dudes that just wanted to sit there and do, AC/DC on the good side, or like Genesis or something on the bad side, where they have like 15 toms and it's just like a nightmare. It's like, no, we're going bam, 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 just like horrible, So it took a while to find the right people that could actually sort of could gel into something and who were interested in doing originals, because most people weren't interested in it. It was just kind of a weird thing to want to do that. Like, people thought you were kind of weird at my high school. So, and also, I mean, it seemed like everybody who was playing in these bands around here, like, we saw Husker Du and stuff, were completely freaked out by Husker Du. Actually, Grant Hart, the drummer from Husker Du, worked at Hot Licks on White Bear Avenue, and so I met him because he was the clerk at that store, and he would turn me on the records and stuff. And then at one point, he was like, oh yeah, we got this band, you should come and check us out. And this is like around the time that I suppose Land Speed record or something came out, and so we went and saw him. It was just like, oh my God, because it was so intense. They had like all these 90-second songs, and it was just like an alien universe, so not like regular rock, But I was fascinated with it because they had like really cool little tunes. It's just they went on like a very short period of time. It was extremely aggressive, and it's like there's a combination of like people who seemed really old, but they were all, again, they were probably like 19, but we're like 15, and so it's like these people are like, like old and scary, and so we're kind of cowering in the corner, and there's all these people slam dancing, and a certain number of people just kind of standing around, just kind of going, which I realized later is probably because they're really high or something, but at that point you don't know why, it was just like, just hilarious stuff, when I think about, and in the meanwhile, we were fronting so hard that we were really cool and really rock and roll, that we could hang, but we're all like just dorks, in 10th grade, it's like, what can you do? It's just really, really funny.
Are there songs, is there a song from that era that you remember it being a kind of a big deal for you, or a record that just...
Well, I mean, I worked at a record store, and so I had an enormous diet of records. I was listening to just everything, like scouring the world for stuff, And it's like the bands that were the real motivations for me on an international level were the punk bands and the mod bands, It's like it was sort of, Pistols were long gone by the time I started going out shows, but, the Clash were still sort of limping along. The Jam were like a way of life for me. That band was extremely important. And stuff that was in that sort of milieu of sort of pop punk mod revival kind of bands were really important to me. But I mean, of almost equivalent importance was the local scene, because to go out and see a local band that was as good as the Replacements, where you would stand there and every song in the set is like an amazing song that you're like humming after the show, And Huskers were like that too, and there were a bunch of other bands that were really, really, really good, but it was particularly those bands. I was just like, wait a minute, this is as good as anything that I hear from anywhere else. This is like crazy. And I, got to witness like that band playing shows that were like absolutely pinnacle, like as good as a rock and roll show can be, from like, standing like where that table is right there when they played here, and going, this is like, I'd seen The Who like at the Civic Center, and The Who still are my favorite band. And when I was a kid, that Pete Townsend and the way that they approach things in many ways totally formed what I am. They're the most important influence I had, probably. To me, the Replacements were as good as that. But they was in like, like that, the dude is like spitting at the crowd and there's like spit on you. Like it's like 5 feet away from you, and deafeningly loud and in real time. And they're not like some superheroes. They're just like these dudes from South Minneapolis who seem ancient, but really they were like 5 years older than me, probably,